This week we're taking a look at the PineTime Pro, KDE 6.6, the newest Kali Linux release, Ubuntu's sort of controversial changes to Grub, and a whole lot more. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 248, recorded Saturday, March the 28th. It's like a crayon. Hey folks, it is Saturday, and as you know, that means it's time for Linux. It's the Untitled Linux Show. We're going to talk software and hardware. In fact, we're going to lead off with some hardware here in just a minute. We're going to talk about everybody's favorite stuff, OSs and desktop environments, SystemD, and the ongoing age verification stuff. It's going to be fun. And let's get into it. So I've got my normal cadre of co-hosts. We've got Rob and Jeff and Ken, and we're gonna talk about some stories. Rob is gonna lead us off, actually, and he's got one of those companies, one of those open source groups that we enjoy the stuff from, that has a pro version of one of their very old offerings. Rob, what is up with Pine?
And now it's time for another segment of the Something Jonathan Should Buy show. So, apparently, nearly 7 years after the original PineTime launched, Pine 64 is getting ready to try again, which actually really surprises me because I know me and Jonathan both bought one of the original PineTimes a few years ago. I don't know, 3-4 years ago. And at that time, I thought that it had just came out then, but I know we haven't been around for 7 years, so maybe there was some other big story that led us both to get it at that time. I don't know, but I guess it's been 7 years. Either way, Jonathan made use of his, but mine collected dust. It was fine, but I don't know. I thought it was kind of chintzy or cheap in my opinion. But to be fair, it didn't cost very much either. So what was I to expect? I just didn't feel like wearing it in public. So, but now, in a community update from FOSDEM 2026, the company revealed the PineTime Pro, an updated version of its FOSS-friendly smartwatch. The new model is set to include an AMOLED display, built-in GPS, blood oxygen sensing, and rotating digital crown with an extra button, which sounds a lot more premium and maybe somewhat comparable to some of the more popular smartwatches today. It's at least clearly an upgrade from the original that is going to be more capable while still appealing to the same open source crowd. Pine 64 always says the PineTime Pro will use a custom chip, though technical details are still limited. One of the key improvements is that individual components can be powered down independently, which should help battery life. Paired with the AMOLED screen, that could make the new watch more efficient than its predecessor. And I mean, I hope so. Efficiency is kind of a thing that usually comes with progress. So, but there are still plenty of unknowns. Pine 64 has not announced a price or release date yet, and it is still deciding how to handle fundraising. But whatever happens, the PineTime Pro is unlikely to match the original sub $30 price, though it could still be a very strong value. I mean, yeah, I think it was $20 or something, somewhere under $30 US dollars. And I don't know, it's so cheap. I'm like, let's try it out. I'll buy it. And I did nothing with it. But another open question is software. In InfiniTime, the open source firmware that helped keep the original PineTime relevant, may or may not run on the new model. So not sure what they're going to have on there for sure yet. So for now, Pine 64's message is simple. The PineTime is back, this time with more features, more ambitions, and plenty of questions still to be answered. If this turns out to be a decent watch, all we really will need is a decent Linux phone to go with it.
So I've seen some of these different devices come and go. I do a lot more embedded work these days, and so I've got some examples here of different watches. And I will say one of the things that the original PineTime really had going for it was its size. It was tiny. It actually worked as a watch. So you've got like some very cool things. This is a Liligo watch, but it's huge. And this is one of the things that is sort of the
It's kind of thick.
Yeah. I won't tell you what people have described this as being similar to because it's not very nice, but just think about it a little bit and I'm sure you'll come up with it. But it's, you can pack a lot of capability and a lot of battery into something that size if you're willing to go that big. But it's become bigger than the size of watch that most people would be willing to wear. And looking at these two pictures, I'm kind of afraid that the PineTime Pro is going to stray into that same problem. It's just, it looks like it's fatter, it's bigger, and I don't know. I think that's really the biggest advantage that the original had going for it is it was so small.
Yeah, what I do remember from the original is, at least when it was off, it looked like a decent premium watch, like the Apple Watch or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Though when it turned on, you just had like a square screen that was noticeably separate from like the outside. When it was off, it looked like the whole thing was a screen, just like an Apple Watch. But yeah, it just had that little odd screen that, it could have been worked with, but I don't know. I really didn't have time for it. It was just, I donated my $30 to their
cause,
to their initiative, to their cause.
Yeah. One of the other
them.
things I've seen pointed out is that apparently Pine is having problems right now because of the price of RAM, trying to keep some of these devices manufactured. And there's questions about what that's going to mean for this one. And I will say probably not as much because this is based on an NRF, which is an all-in-one. It's like an SoC, a little tiny SoC from Nordic. I'm very familiar with the NRF that they're using here. So the RAM prices have not hit that yet. Although I will tell you, I have heard rumblings that going forward in the future, the availability on even some of these little MCUs is going to be affected by the various shortages we're going through.
Yeah, you guys could tell me more, but I can't imagine whatever RAM is in the tiny little RAM is in that watch.
Well, it's not,
is the same as the same production lines
it's
necessarily.
not so much as that. It's getting a production line to do that instead.
Well, right. What I was saying is I don't imagine it's the same production lines.
A lot of times those little SoCs, they just design the RAM as part of the chip. And a lot of those, they're not running the big cutting edge stuff. So they're not, the price of a RAM has nothing to do with those little SoCs other than if they're contracting out, but usually they're not cutting edge.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the sheer count of transistors and they're not volume. So they're running probably on a fab with 8-inch wafers. And so it's not even holding up the huge manufacturing lines.
So this is a Nordic NRF52, which that's like 2 generations old from the new NRF54 that Nordic is really trying to push right now. So it's based on the ARM Cortex M4. It's 64K of RAM. So yes, we're not talking about very much RAM. And so I was sort of saying that tongue in cheek. However, I am hearing from my MCU guys that even little tiny things like this are starting to be difficult to get in volume.
Is that because the volume's decreased over time, especially for the older ones?
It's just because everything is growing so big and there's so much competition for fab time for everything.
Yeah, so it kind of pushes everything down, right? So, for example, let's just come up with like TSMC. They're booked with the latest Nvidia, Apple, some Intel stuff. Well, okay, then who's going to make that? Well, okay, Samsung picks up some, Intel picks up some. But some of the lower end chips they were making now gets pushed to more mom and pop shops, some of the 8-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch fabs. But the stuff they were making then gets pushed down. And it's just everybody's pushing wafers through as hard as they can.
Well, yep.
I heard some, I was reading, I didn't hear. I was reading some of the comments in one of the articles. And a lot of the commenters were not very positive about this. Basically mentioning about how they've been burned on things like the Pine phone, on how, they release their Pine phones and then dropped the ball and just kind of didn't do anything with them, didn't go anywhere with them, didn't make them keep improving or make them useful. And that was a good number of the comments on there I saw.
Pine has sort of gained the reputation of building something that's hardware and then acting like it's spaghetti and just kind of throwing it against the wall and see if it sticks, see if anybody will build good software for it.
Or firmware?
Personally, I'm just waiting for the good Linux phone.
Me too.
Whenever that comes up.
So I find it a little odd that they throw a watch out there, but
I'm a bit of a Luddite. I'm all about the old school analog dial.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I got so used to not wearing a watch because every time I'd get to work when I was in the Air Force, I'd have to take it off.
True.
I like to be able to see when my meetings are, and when I have maps going down the road, it'll vibrate and say, "Ooh, you got to turn." So I can have the thing muted.
Phone.
I can have the phone muted, so I don't have to hear the dumb, voice saying, "Turn right."
Which voice did you select?
So apparently, talking about the pricing thing again, apparently this week, Intel, AMD, ST Micro, Allegro, and probably a couple of others have all come out and said we're going to have to raise prices. It was a lot of different people that were affected by, again, this crunch on the fab side have come out and we can't do what we're doing. We can't leave prices where they're at. And so they're gonna increase prices pretty much everywhere. So you got that to look forward to for this year, the rest of this year.
Quickly, I wanted to touch on the firmware. You said InfiniTime may or may not be the default. Is it possible Pine's thinking about going with the PineTime Lite, which is a fork of InfiniTime?
I mean, it's hard to say. I was actually going to take a look quickly and see if I could see what. Yeah, it looks like they have an NRF52 port, so it wouldn't be difficult to make InfiniTime work on the new device. It's all NRF52, so it's just a matter of porting over the display driver and then remapping the GPIO and then adding drivers for whatever new hardware you've got on there, and then adding for whether they say they can turn on and off the individual pieces of hardware, so they either have that controlled with just GPIOs or they've got like a power controller switch on there, and either way it's pretty straightforward to get support for that going. So they could do it through Infinite. And with this, if the guys at Pine want to do it, is they may fork InfiniTime, build the support there, and then slowly push it back up. That's a pattern you see pretty often. So sorry, it's hard to say. This kind of makes me want to go pull my PineTime back out and flash the newer InfiniTime to it, because I know they've been working on it, and this thing has continued to get updates, and they've made it better, and they've added features. So I kind of want to go try it out again.
Did they add the ability to run KDE Plasma on it?
So if you hadn't picked up, that is a segue to Jeff's story about KDE Plasma 6. And there is some interesting stuff going on over there. Jeff, take it away and tell us all about it.
Well, I have 2 articles in the show notes today, and both are benchmarking. No, not the new Intel CPUs, though I will cover those when the Linux benchmarks are out there. No, this week we're looking at Gnome and KDE on both AMD and Nvidia hardware. It's been a while since we compared the two, so let's get started. All the testing was done on Ubuntu 26.04 beta with Gnome 50 on Wayland and KDE Plasma 6.6 with both X11 and Wayland sessions. The GPU on the first story was AMD Radeon 9070 XT with Mesa 26. And the second story, where it's testing with NVIDIA hardware, it was a GeForce RTX 5080 with the new NVIDIA 595.58.03 Linux driver. All the software was how it comes out of the box, from the Ubuntu 26.04 beta repository. So no settings were changed, just the default was how it was rolled. Between the 2 articles, there's some games which don't match, and that's because the AMD Radeon graphics still had some hard freezes with some of the games that prevented some from actually being tested on the AMD hardware. And there's some missing X11 benchmarks in there as well because some things just wouldn't run. So any missing data is because something locked up or couldn't run at all. On the AMD GPU, when looking at the overall geometric mean, Plasma 6.6 Wayland came out on top. A little bit behind was Plasma X11, and a large step back was Gnome 50. So on AMD hardware, KDE is performing better than Gnome. In the second article, looking at the Nvidia GPU, there's a little change as there are no X11 benchmarks. Trying to get the X11 working on Nvidia was not working so well, so Michael had to abandon those results. So on the Nvidia hardware, it's just Wayland only roundup. Other than that, though, things didn't really change. KDE Plasma came out on top by a decent margin over Gnome 50. Pretty much very closely matching the AMD GPU test results. And on both of them, there was a few places where Gnome was a little bit better than KDE, a few places where they were identical, and several where KDE came out on top. And there was a couple where KDE was almost double the speed of Gnome 50. Bottom line, if you want the fastest desktop between KDE and Gnome, you need to be on KDE. Now, one thing that didn't show was resource usage. I did take a look around the internet a bit, but I didn't find anything recent. And a lot of times there's just some numbers published by somebody, but not a lot of context of software and revisions and how they tested. They kind of just threw up some, here's what I did. Well, I don't put a lot of stock where I can't see the methodologies and revisions of everything. So for now, it's going to remain an unanswered question. You can have a look at the articles linked in the show notes and see what you think for yourselves. And, let us know if this might change the default desktop you're going to be using in the future.
Yeah, this is super interesting. Worth pointing out that Ubuntu 26.04 is just now in beta, just had the beta release of that. And April 23rd, I think, is what I saw the full release date is going to be. Yeah, April 23rd. So coming up soon. Resolute Raccoon. May have to install it. May have to install it somewhere.
With 7.0.
Yeah. I have to install 26.04 somewhere just to be able to say I did.
It may be the last Ubuntu worth installing, but we'll talk about that later.
Wow. That is quite the statement.
Throwing some shade around.
Goodness.
Did I hear you say that he couldn't get Nvidia to work with X11 only with Wayland?
Yeah.
Sounds
But I mean,
right.
it's beta. So
I mean, that's sure a big change though from the past and what everyone's complaining about.
No, you don't. Don't you remember the feature we talked about a year ago that on Wayland under Nvidia you had to wiggle your mouse back and forth to get the screen to refresh?
Right.
I remember that.
Now it's the opposite. Now X doesn't work.
Well, and it was also the brand Ubuntu beta, and it's using the brand new, that 595.58.03 driver. So there's a lot of cutting edge stuff. And I have a story later that could go into maybe why it didn't work. So there's some revision requirements for X11 that maybe it wasn't meeting yet.
If you want cutting edge, you need Wayland. I heard it.
Yeah.
At this point,
I seem to remember years ago, you had problems with Nvidia, period.
Yeah.
Linux.
That's still true sometimes.
They've cleaned it up a lot.
It's better now. Yeah, it's a lot.
They've cleaned it up a lot because, it used to be you had to have a few settings or you'd get a black screen when you first booted in. You had to force some modes and things like that to get it to work. Once you did that, usually things were pretty okay on X11. Now, fast forward to say the last year, NVIDIA was really leaning into the AI. Well, AI is heavily into Linux. So they've really tried to buddy up to Linux. So they've been throwing some extra resources into making the GPU side work a lot better.
I mean, it is heavy in Linux, but not necessarily for the graphics and display part of it that we tend to care more about.
Yeah, but you get the trickle down.
Drivers.
You get some trickle down economics going on.
They're trying to get rid of the
let's not
stigma.
get political here, Jonathan.
Yeah.
One more thing about this particular story, with it being on Ubuntu 26.04, I want to tease real quick. The Ubuntu conference, the release conference, is going to be in London in end of May, I believe, where they're going to celebrate this, have a bunch of talks. It looks like I'll be there for that. So we'll have more news about that as we get closer to it, links and all of that. But last I heard, my talk idea was accepted, and so hopefully we can get over there and let you guys see it. All right. So here in a minute, Ken is going to put on his hacker hat. Didn't realize he had one of those, but apparently he does. And he's going to talk about Kali Linux. We'll let him do that right after this. All right, Ken, tell us about Kali.
Well, Jonathan, as you said, we've got some information coming this week from Bobby Borisov, Marcus Nestor, and Jack Wallen. They all wrote about the latest release of the Debian-based GNU Linux distribution for penetration testing and ethical hacking. Kali Linux 2026.1. According to Bobby, it features a new annual theme, a backtrace-inspired desktop mode, updated tools, and a kernel upgrade. This year's visual refresh includes a new boot splash screen, a new bootloader theme, and a brand new desktop theme for the flagship XFCE edition. It also includes updated artwork for the graphical installer and the login and lock screens. This year marks the 20th anniversary of Backtrace Linux.
Backtrack
Linux, excuse me. That's my mind wandering. The predecessor to Kali, which celebrates this milestone by adding a backtrack mode to Kali Undercover. This mode transforms the desktop to recreate the look and feel of Backtrack 5 with the same wallpaper, colors, and window themes. Jack even provides more historical background in this article. According to Marcus, the Kali NetHunter app for mobile devices has been updated as well, with a new kernel for Android 16 on Redmi Note 8 devices, support for using the internal wireless firmware of Samsung S10 series devices in Kali Chiroot, Wi-Fi packet injection on QCalD 3.0, and various bug fixes. I'm going to let you read Bobby, Marcus, and Jack's articles to get the list of new tools added to the repositories, but definitely check out that history section that Jack gives.
Yeah, they're going to use like KDE 3 or just Trinity desktop to get that old KDE look.
No, it's just theming.
They should just go all in, go all retro.
You can do that with Kali 6.6 or KDE 6.6.
Yeah. I'm now looking at the history of Backtrack. It was the merger of Auditor Security Collection and Wax. I think it was sort of before my time even. I do remember using Backtrack back in the day, but Wax was a Slacks-based Linux distro for security. And Auditor Security Collection was a live CD based on Knoppix. Oh, there's a name. Yep. I've not heard that name in a long time, but I do remember Knoppix.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're before my time, but
Before you were using Linux?
No, I don't think they were before I was using Linux either. I mean, Knoppix came after I was using Linux. It's just I think they were just never in the public eye enough that I heard about them. Or I wasn't.
Yeah, I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah, well, when I say before my time, I mean before I was invested in Backtrack and now Kali. But yeah, man, Knoppix brings back some memories though. That was one of the first live CD Linux?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
like the first. That was their thing.
One of the first ones that allowed you to do penetration testing.
Knoppix?
I mean, you could off of Knoppix, but Backtrack was really the one that was.
Yeah, I don't think Knoppix
made it easy.
I don't think Knoppix had anything special about it for pen testing.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, it was, man, that was cool. Cool times. I remember that.
Why am I thinking of watching a Screensavers episode where they talked about using Knoppix while they were for drive-by Wi-Fi.
Very possibly. War driving.
War drive. That's the term.
That was the thing.
Boy, I haven't heard that term for a while.
Yeah, it'd probably be beneficial at the time just because you could boot into it and have a live boot session and then just do whatever, but it probably won't be any different than if you just installed a wardrobe.
And then just pulled it out of the laptop when somebody asks you to check it out and they find out it's Windows.
There you go. Fun times. I've not installed Kali Linux for a while. I need to get another bootable flash drive going again and get the newest Kali on it and all of that good stuff.
Is that one that you could put on Ventoy and boot from? I'm sure
you could. You may have to grab the newest Ventoy update. I've had times where a new ISO wouldn't boot without the newest Ventoy before, but I'm sure it is something that you could get going there pretty easily.
Kali or Parrot, or just put them both on there.
Put them both on there. You might as well. Flash drives are cheap these days.
And big.
Big?
No, they're still only
big. Okay.
Size wise.
I got
storage wise.
I thought you were telling us that we needed the big Linux distro, and I was trying to figure out what you were talking about.
No,
I'm not familiar with that one, man.
I think there is a big Linux, so
probably
there is. I want to say it's from a South American country. I can't remember which one offhand.
Well, I mean, we have all kinds of weird names. We've got Grub, which is they're big Linux. It's a Brazilian Manjaro. But Ubuntu's Grub is making some changes. Rob actually has a story about this, and it's dropping file systems. Oh no, don't we need those?
Somebody thinks so. So Ubuntu may be headed toward one of its more controversial changes in years, or maybe just months. I mean, shocking. Ubuntu creating controversy again. That's kind of what they do these days, isn't it? So this time it centers on Grub, secure boot, and what users may have to give up in the name of security. Canonical is proposing to strip down the signed Grub bootloader for Ubuntu 26.10. Grub's many parsers and features have been a steady source of security problems. So reducing what signed Grub can do would shrink the attack surface in the pre-boot environment. From a security standpoint, that makes sense. And, security and usability is always a balancing act. It's always been that way. But the trade-off could be huge for some people. Under the proposal, signed Grub will lose support for ButterFS, XFS, and ZFS, along with LVM, most MD RAID modes, Luke's encrypted dry disks, and even some theming support. In practical terms, secure boot systems would be pushed toward a very basic setup. Basically, an unencrypted ext4 boot partition. That's all you can have if you want Ubuntu. Now, it's not the end of the world, but if you wanted the advanced stuff back, you would need to use an unsigned Grub build and give up the secure boot. So for Ubuntu, security is only important for unencrypted ext4, and isn't kind of the lack of encryption also its own security issue? I mean, if you really want a secure system, don't you also want encryption? I know maybe boot drive, it doesn't matter as much, but anyway, things like ButterFS, as you know, it's not a fringe file system anymore. It's one of the most popular Linux file systems out there after ext4, probably, especially with users who want to use snapshots and rollback features. And I know Jeff has had some experience using it lately with CachyOS. Then there's ZFS, or for you guys across the pond or in Canada, ZFS, which makes this especially awkward for Ubuntu. And why? And that's because Ubuntu has long been the only major Linux distro willing to support ZFS, ZFS en route out of the box. Nobody else was willing to cross that licensing line. So if you wanted ZFS, ZFS, you had to use Ubuntu. That's been a unique selling point. This proposal wouldn't remove ZFS from Ubuntu entirely, but it would remove it from the signed secure boot path. So your boot path could be ext4 and everything else could be ZFS. But that it limits your options of what you really want. Maybe you want all the benefits of ZFS or ButterFS on your root, because if you want to have snapshots, that's kind of one place you want to be able to snapshot. So anyway, technically, all these things will still exist. For users who want secure boot, it's basically just gone on root. Critics have also pointed out that some of the features Canonical wants to cut are not necessarily niche, such as RAID 1 boot setups. Those are fairly common. Ubuntu's own installer has leaned on LVM for quite some time now. Ubuntu's encryption setup also depends on LVM today. So this is not just removing obscure options nobody uses. It risks breaking with the way Ubuntu itself has told people to install systems. So once again, Canonical is going out on a limb, seeing if they can push the limits of whatever they want to push this week. Better security, I guess, is what they think, by making SystemD much smaller and simpler. But in doing that, Ubuntu could also lose some of its key strengths. I know a lot of Linux users are just used to disabling secure boot anyway, but that's also kind of been one of the benefits to Ubuntu is you actually could just have secure boot on and use that feature. But there you have it.
That really surprises me because I could see maybe ZFS because it's not built into the kernel.
Take a step back here. But which partition are they doing this with?
It's just for the boot up process for Grub, so it only affects the root partition.
Once you've got booted up, and then your root can be on a ZFS or ButterFS, correct?
Yeah, it's not changing the root partition, just boot.
Yeah.
I want to hear what Jeff was thinking though.
Well, I could see though that maybe ZFS you could make an argument because it's not built into the kernel, but ButterFS basically the other ones are built in. It's like it makes no real sense to me.
I think ButterFS.
I hear what they're saying. But then the comment would seem to be, well, why not just use SystemD boot if you want to just really streamline the booting process?
Yeah, you can get rid of Grub altogether.
Yeah.
But I think ButterFS should be there. I mean, that's huge these days.
For the boot partition itself?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's how you do snapshots. If you want to snapshot your entire system, even your boot, you're gonna want to snapshot that because when you do an update, you want to be able to roll back your whole boot and kernel and everything.
But if you've got a copy of that boot under your root, the boot partition itself can be anything while the copy is still under be on ButterFS, correct?
You can mount it there, but that does not give you the snapshotting.
You want to actually be snapshotting.
So in the thread here, one of the guys pushing back on this is Conan Kudo, which that is the username for Neil Gampa, a friend of mine, and he makes some really interesting points about why part of this is a bad idea, including and how that you want your shot tied to a particular kernel version. That's sort of part of the point. And then also, apparently, some of the different flavors of Ubuntu use those images, which they are looking to try to turn off. I must say, though, that I get the point that all of these different flags and things inside of Grub is and as he put, as Julian K puts it, a constant source of security issues. And Grub has had some security problems trying to do really solid secure boot. And so I get why they want to do this. The challenge you have with something like this is every time you list something and say, we're going to remove this, someone on the internet somewhere is going to go, no, that breaks my workflow. And of course, there's an XKCD comic about this. Can't you just add an option to heat up again? Go check it out. You get the joke. But it's hard to take features away from users. As someone who has run open source projects, it's hard to do. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you got to swallow the bitter pill and say, no, this was always a misfeature and it's going to go away. I'm sorry. I don't know.
I don't think all those file systems. I mean, what if we just stopped using ext4 altogether at some point, and then I don't know.
Well, I mean, to me, too, Grub has got such legs under it. I mean, it's been around for quite a while now. It's
for secure system, for secure boot.
Oh yes,
yeah.
Oh yes.
But I mean, if you're, I still say if you would be better off if they just said, okay, we're going to go SystemD or we're going to do something else rather than try to tweak.
Yeah, they really want to push.
If you're really that worried about it, you know,
I think SystemD boots a more of a future. Well, maybe not with SystemD's current. I don't know.
Is SystemD boot UEFI only?
I don't remember.
know.
I think it might be. And you would immediately go, oh, well, that doesn't matter. Everything is UEFI. Well, no, everything hardware is UEFI. But you get into virtualization and cloud computing, and a lot of those are actually not booting UEFI because at least the last time I checked, the tools to virtualize UEFI were still very immature. And there was a lot of old school BIOS booting.
One other option could be they could maintain maybe 2 or 3, or I don't know. They could decide what other features are really important, and maybe they've already decided that. But they could have a ButterFS only one, a ZFS only one. Whatever ones they decide are, and I'm sure it probably costs a money to get each one signed or something. But
well, and they could even do like Cache. When you first go into it and you're loading it up, they ask you, what bootloader do you want? You want SystemD? You want Grub? I think there's a couple others. They could just go, do you want willing to take the risk with full open Grub, or do you want the lockdown, basically ext4 Grub?
No, I wonder. I don't pay attention. Is Cache signed?
Yeah. Well, that's the question I had too. Are you still able to install Linux distro with using an unsigned Grub build?
You can.
Yes, you have to go into your BIOS settings and tell it you have to turn off secure boot. Essentially, that's the point of having a signed Grub, is that you can make it work
for years.
with
A lot
boot.
of people are instantly told that. When secure boot first came out, people are told, well, when you install Linux, you gotta disable secure boot and things like that.
But,
I mean, that's kind of mostly a thing from the past.
Well, and realistically, okay, there's security issues in Grub. How many of those are like you have to have access to the local machine versus remote access?
They are almost
They're all
entirely. In fact, I would say that probably every one of them are. You have to have access to the local machine. The reason why that does matter, though, is particularly like in corporate environments, you'll have setups where the drives are encrypted, and Grub will get an encryption key from like a local TPM and use that to.
How are we going to encrypt them with Lux
TPM? Trust
that they're taking away.
Actually, no.
Well, so there's a couple of different ways to do drive encryption. Lux is not the only one. This scheme also does work with an unencrypted boot if you have working secure boot, because it doesn't have to be encrypted to check that security signature on your actual kernel. And then the part that's encrypted is the rest of the hard drive, right? Like your root partition. And so this is a thing that you actually see. In fact, it's required, unfortunately, in certain use cases that you've got to have some sort of solution set up like this to where you can have an encrypted root partition and then some way to automatically decrypt it at boot. And the way that this is done in many cases is to Grub. There is a bug in Grub to run whatever. If you can run kernel image or an unsigned init ramfs, something like that, well, then you can decrypt your root volume and do whatever you want to on it. You can escape out of that sort of sandbox environment, that encryption sandbox that is intended for the machine to use. So like in some of these circumstances, it is actually a really big deal to keep Grub 2 really secure. And so that's the sort of thing that they're getting at.
Well, you know what they could also have? They could have that. They could just have two. They could have the same Grub that they have today signed, and then they could have their ultra secure simplified Grub.
I think you run into questions there about whether Microsoft would be willing to sign the two different versions of it. Isn't it Microsoft that signs all of these for Linux distros?
I think so, but they're like buddy. They're really close friends.
Because Microsoft loves Linux.
Well, especially Canonical. I mean, they were the first ones on WSL, and they're buds.
But
That's fair.
basically, is this proposal primarily aimed at enterprise users?
It's in the proposal. It's not necessarily aimed at anyone, but I'm just saying the group of people that really care about Grub security, that's where they're at. They're in the enterprise. It's the group of people that also care about security compliance and FIPS certification.
Yeah.
Blah, blah,
Ubuntu
blah.
is FIPS, I know. I think I saw something about them getting a new FIPS recently.
Yeah.
So unless you're actually wanting to play around with the system using a secure boot, then you could just
Turn off
go
secure
with-
boot
yeah.
and boot whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and not use Ubuntu.
If you can turn off secure boot.
Are there any desktops? Are there any motherboards out there that you can't?
the one in the HP system I've got.
Can you not turn it off?
No.
I have found a way on every machine I've ever touched. I've eventually found a way to turn off secure boot. I don't think I've ever worked on one that I couldn't. But that is not to say that that doesn't exist. Like I would absolutely believe that it would,
Especially with HP.
Well, some of the newer stuff, it's just kind of defaulting to that's what you want to run.
Yeah. I mean, everything defaults to secure boot on, and sometimes they really work to hide it, make it difficult to turn it off. You know, I've seen times where it's like, you have to go into a completely different BIOS menu, and then it'll reboot again, and it'll put a code on the screen. Like if you really want to turn off secure boot, type in 053 and press enter, and then it'll reboot again and finally turn it off for you. All kinds of fun stuff.
That seems like it'd be very limiting if there's actually some that you can't turn it off at all.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, let's move along and let's talk Nvidia again. And guess who? It's Jeff that has this story as well. Somehow we're not surprised. Give us the scoop. Set us on Team Green.
Yes. Tell us how bad they are. Go for it. Now.
So in the last article we talked about Nvidia hardware using the 595.58.03 driver. And if you've not heard of this one, that's because it just came out a few days ago. So the new driver marks the first stable release of the 595 production branch, and it has some meaningful improvements for Linux, for Wayland and Vulkan, and Linux gaming overall. Something new is that the NVIDIA-DRM space mode set equals 1 is now enabled by default, which is some of the historical stuff we were talking about. You'd have to manually set your mode set in your Grub boot options, but now that's set by default, which is important for proper Wayland support in Gnome and KDE Plasma. Updated the driver to allow NVIDIA-SMI to reset GPUs while NVIDIA DRM is loaded with the mode set equals 1 parameter enabled, as long as no other processors are using the GPU. And they also fixed a regression introduced after the 470 release series that could cause 4K monitors driven as separate X11 X screens on one GPU to fail mode set. So they put a lot of work into mode set for this driver. They have added a Vulkan extension, VK_EXT_descriptor_heap, which allows games, especially those running through Proton with DXVK or VKD3D Proton, to store buffers and images directly in the GPU accessible memory. This reduces CPU overhead and lays the groundwork for future performance gains and Windows to Linux translation layers. Well, users shouldn't expect immediate FPS boosts. This is a foundational change that will matter more as Proton and Wine integrate it more. Another extension added is the VK_EXT_present_timings, which gives applications detailed timing information about frame presentation and lets them target specific presentation times. This helps smooth out gameplay and video playback, reducing stutter and improving frame pacing. The new driver also adds DRI3 version 1.2 support, bringing DMA fences to NVIDIA's stack. This is an improvement for modern Linux gaming, helping prevent tearing and improving synchronization between GPU and display servers. There is, for those that like number crunching, there's a new application profile. There's a CUDA no stable performance limit, which allows CUDA-based applications to reach the GPU's highest performance state, P0, which can significantly improve compute workloads that were previously capped. Now, while researching things for the driver, I also found some people are now saying that HDR now works without needing the HDR layer or enable HDR_WSI, though they didn't officially document it, but it seems like those were a little more those were temporary fixes until other groundwork got laid, and it sounds like now you possibly don't need those anymore. So they've streamlined the driver a little bit. While there's a lot of goodies and bug fixes in this release, I should add it does raise some system requirements. So you need to have Wayland version 1.2 or 1.20, along with glibc 2.27, and this could be what was going on in Ubuntu 26.04 beta and not running X, is you have to have Xorg 1.17. So take a look at the article linked in the show notes for more details of upgrades and bug fixes. And, there was a lot of fixes for freezes and stutters in games, and things that running better now that I didn't even cover. So there's a lot still in there. The articles also have a link to the official NVIDIA release notes. So happy reading.
Apparently the NVIDIA release notes have an issue that they have things in the changelog that were for the previous version. So it's sort of a pain to read in some cases.
Hey, yeah, it's new NVIDIA. Of course, it's not going to be good.
So you take and compared the previous changelog to the current one with diff.
Yeah, you diff it, and the difference is the ones that are actually new.
They were really trying to stuff it to make it look like they did more than they did.
Well, the thing is, though, is as much as people hate NVIDIA, they're like 95% of the market.
Oh, yeah.
As much as everybody says, oh, I hate NVIDIA. Why are people buying AMD more,
as much as people say they hate Windows, it's still like 95% of the market. Come on, Jeff. That's not a good reason.
Well, it is because on Windows, you could at least argue you're locked in because of software.
I think that's a good reason to hate them. You got to hate the big guys. You got to love the underdogs.
Rob?
Yeah.
Did you notice that NVIDIA is still supporting X.org?
Yeah, so they're stuck in the past too. Gotcha.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, we're going to talk about something not at all controversial next. SystemD and a fork. We're going to do it right after a quick break. We'll be right back.
Jonathan, thank you for that long break. Now everybody should be ready for me to talk about Saurav Rudrov's latest article, where he wrote about a developer, Jeffrey Sardina, and I do apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but about his response to the SystemD project merging a pull request, adding a birth date field to its user records. I think we covered that recently, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the field is optional, can only be set by an administrator, and SystemD itself does nothing with the data. What was this Jeffrey's response? He forked it, creating liberated SystemD to strip out what he considers surveillance-enabling code, keeping everything else intact, and stay in sync with upstream as it develops. The fork changes 12 files across 5 commits, all focused on scrubbing out everything related to the birth date addition. That means not just the field itself, but also the option to set a birth date via the home CTL, the relevant man page entries, display code, and test. According to Saurav, forks like this are meant to ignite conversation rather than ending up as a significant open source project. Now, you can find more information about this in Saurav's article. Jonathan, what's your take on this?
Ridiculous.
I do think it is kind of ridiculous. Like I understand why people do not like the age verification stuff, but it's just a birth date in a database. The SystemD thing, like, you can make an argument that it's a good thing to have in SystemD, even if there's not any laws regarding it. So I don't know. I don't really care for these forks that are just performative art. I think
it is.
Yes, I think there's enough real work to be done that we don't need this sort of thing.
And with what it describes, Jeffrey did do a lot of work with this.
Yeah, but looking at the code, there's just some stuff removed. It's not even that much. I mean, seems pretty small. Now, the thing too, when you talk performative art, anybody thinks, "Wow, I'm going to jump on this." The article talks about it was 37 commits behind as of when the article was written. So it's not,
he's working well on keeping it up to date.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and move right into, because these two really go together. Let's go right into the SystemD interview Rob has. Tell us the other side of the story.
Yeah. So, we've been talking about this for weeks, and Ken even brings up another bonkers story about it. So there's more to SystemD than just the all the community going bonkers over adding a field to it. There's actually a human side of the story too. The developer at the center of this all is Dylan M. Taylor, a longtime open source contributor with work tied to the Arch Linux installer, Nixos packages, and other FOSS projects. What pushed him into the spotlight, was seemingly a small change. I think most of us agree. I'm not sure about Ken, but the optional birth date field in SystemD user base meant as a lightweight and optional way for Linux distributions to deal with the emerging state age verification. I mean, it's out there. Things had to be done. You can't just, I don't know. Anyway, Dylan is very clear that this is not what many people seem to assume it is. In his own words, a common misconception about this change is that it introduces age verification into Linux. And we've been trying to debunk this for weeks. He says it doesn't. He points out that there are no ID checks, no facial recognition, and no third-party verification services involved. It is just a simple addition of a birth date field, as was pointed out every week here for the past month almost. In fact, he says you can enter any date you want, even January 1st, 1900. You could be 126 years old. He also pushed back on the fear that this is the start of OS level surveillance. Dylan said, quote, moving towards OS level surveillance is definitely not the intention, and argued that if anything, a simple self-attested signal like this is relatively weak compared to the far more trackable data most of you out there are using, like browser cookies. So he even made the point that not reporting a common value could make users more fingerprintable rather than less. But the story gets darker after that. And this is where people really get bonkers. According to the interview with Dylan, he says the backlash went far beyond criticism. I mean, okay, you could criticize for, you shouldn't have gave it and put that on there. It's acceptable. But he describes harassment, doxing, death threats, hate mail, and abuse severe enough that he had to disable issues and pull requests across his GitHub repositories. How does this help anything? When asked how he was handling it, his answer, he says, quote, honestly, not super well. He says people were posting his personal information, harassing him across repos, placing takeout orders with his information, and even sending Mormon missionaries to his house. Whew, there we go. Anyway, you can oppose these laws. You can hate the patch. You can believe Linux should resist this kind of compliance entirely. Dylan himself acknowledges the deeper concern and even says, we may eventually see a split between more compliant corporate-backed distributions and more freedom-first independent ones. He argues that corporate-backed distros may feel they have no practical choice, even if they dislike these laws. I mean, the laws are there. They're a corporation. If they don't follow them, bad things can happen. So you might as well, have it there for them. But none of that justifies what happens to them. As a community, we're better than this. And, as techie nerds, as many of us Linux folks are, I kind of thought we were smarter than this.
Yeah, very, very well said. You read the details here. Apparently, people have been putting his social security number, address, and his cell phone number onto paste bins and things like that, and it's just dumb. It's legit dumb. You may not agree with the actual pull request.
Yeah,
but don't
we all
this.
hate the law. I think. I mean, not the law in general, but I mean these specific age verification laws.
Yeah,
breaking the law,
privacy invading laws.
I do have a bone to pick with you, though, Rob. You could say you're 126 years old. No, a true Linux Unix geek would say they're 56 years old. They were born on January 1st, 1970.
Yeah, well,
there you go.
He's the one who said you could put January 1st, 1900 in there. So,
but you didn't bring it up. That's shameful.
You can.
Apparently, it's not Unix time based. That's if you were to be angry about anything in this, it should be that it's not based on Unix time.
Threats. Why did you not use Unix time? This is a Unix based system. I am furious.
Yeah. This is actually really disheartening that he's getting this kind of stuff.
I don't know if I keep calling him stupid. I wonder if I'm going to start getting some hate mail.
Rob, I've actually had this thought before, because we do live stream and this does go out on the internet. And I've gone to my local police force and I've had a conversation with some of their guys before about, like, what do I do? I live stream. What do I do to make sure you guys don't show up at my door one of these days where somebody has tried to swap me? It's kind of a scary thing.
Maybe a little bit better off with my name being fairly common. I know of more than one person in my area with the same name. So
Go swat their house. Go swat his house. Yeah, not mine.
so just remember that. If anyone has any ideas, I'm not the only one. So just don't do it. Just don't do it anyway, but don't do it.
Indeed. Yeah. I'm real disappointed to see that this is what's going on with this. I think it's a huge overreaction to the technical issue here, and I get why people don't like the law. Although, looking around at how many different governments are doing this, it looks like it's gonna happen, whether you like it or not.
Is in some cases, it's gonna be from end user perspective, especially if you're using free and open source software, unenforceable.
Well,
Hard.
There's a lot of different initiatives out there trying to solve this problem. And ideally, how do you prove that you're a certain age without giving away a whole bunch of other private information? And there's people working on that. And it probably is going to come down to something like that eventually, just because, and talking in America and a lot of the other world, you have to be a certain age to go buy cigarettes or alcohol or things like that. So there's going to be that kind of, how old are you on the internet? The thing is, you show your ID at the liquor store, the guy looks at it and goes, oh, okay, you're old enough. You're not, you put it on a website, you now have possibly exposed it to millions of people, depending on how they keep their security databases and whatnot. And
so in the future, you just had to bring your Linux device when you buy those things and say, here, I see I'm old enough.
Yeah, everybody's got a portable Linux device, don't you?
Everybody
Steam
should.
Deck would qualify as one.
My laptop.
I think I don't remember where I was scrolling at. I didn't really look at it too much, but I saw somebody post a question on like some iOS group, I think it was, asking if people in other countries have to, and I don't think this person was in the US, I don't know, but if they got the recent iOS update, if they also had to put their birthday in just with the recent one. So I mean, of course we all know
Brazil doing something like this
too?
Brazil has also added that requirement.
Brazil seems to have quite a few Linux distros too, it seems like. I keep hearing about this one in Brazil and that one in Brazil. It's like, man, there's a lot in Brazil, isn't there? So
I say the easy saying is just assume everybody's a minor and treat them that way.
I try to treat you like a kid all the time, Ken.
Thank you.
You think about this. One of the things that's part of this is like we're starting to see. This has been happening for a long time now, actually, but they're starting to see things happen because of it. Studies about how bad certain social media sites and abilities are for kids. And I mean, you've had kids commit suicide as a result of seeing things or having conversations on social media. There was just recently, it was in the news that something with Meta. Where they were held
Meta
culpable
and
for
Google, I think.
Yeah, it was like New Mexico, I think, or Arizona.
Let's see if a U.S. jury verdict against Meta and Google tee up a fight over tech liability shield. That's the Reuters. Meta told to pay $375 million, which is nothing for them, but for misleading users over child safety. This sort of stuff is starting to work its way through the legal system. And so, part of this is not just like, what one side of this is different states are saying you've got to verify your age before you can go to someplace like Pornhub. Like that's one side of it. But the other side of it is a website like Facebook is going to be required to treat a user different if it is a minor versus a full-on adult. And so you've got to have a way to verify that because there's now liability problems with interacting with minors. It's a big old ball of wax. It's not just the simple freedom that I wish it were. I wish it was that easy. I don't want to have to verify my ID or my age or anything to use the internet, but I think that is the world that we are quickly going to be living in, where you do have to verify for certain services, maybe not your identity, but at least your age, because they're going to be required to treat people differently.
I haven't seen an article on this, but I've seen various people say that Facebook is one of the ones really pushing for these laws.
Then I think
because
should include in these laws the requirement by any social media that once the law is in place to automatically close any accounts that have unverified users.
Step 2.
That would be
yes,
chaos.
it would.
It would be so many
the reason
accounts.
Meta and other companies like that want to push this is because then it takes the burden off them. It all goes through the operating system then. So then they go, we just have to have this little check and we don't have to worry about keeping people's data or how do we handle this. I mean, ideally, I would like to see some kind of government issued like blockchain kind of thing where it's just
like a social security number?
No, not so traceable. It's just a age bracket kind of thing that, okay, when you're over, you're between X and Y age, you get this one. Once you're over like 21 in the US, you get this other one.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no other identifiable information to it. It's not tied to your name, your address, it's
frankly,
just
the way the laws are written today, having you manually input your age into your device in some ways is probably more privacy focused than like Facebook having to control that. Because like you said, taking the burden off Facebook, now Facebook just uses whatever kind of API system gets created in the future to ping your device. Hey, how old are you? All right, they're old enough. We don't have to worry about it. And we're not going to ask who you are. Of course, they know everything about you already anyway, but...
Well, and you can look at it as just even more secure from a odds point of view. Okay, I've got, Microsoft with my age and that versus, and I have to worry about them getting hacked, but versus like, X and Facebook.
Every site you've got an account
on.
And you can lie on your computer too if you want. And that's like your choice so far. That's not part of the law saying you have to tell the truth. So far, yeah. I think that's the scare thing people are scared of, is that it is going to turn into full-on verification, like actual verification. The other side of that, which I'd not thought of that until just now, but like one could make an argument that it is much better to do that with as opposed to doing it with every website. Because you think about it, how do you do that with a website? You stand in front of your webcam and you hold up your ID card. Like that is way worse on the privacy side than simply having it attested in your OS. So this is unfortunately, again, it's unfortunately the world that we live in now, and it is not a simple problem that's going to be solved overnight. And if you're going to suck for a while, if you're telling everyone how old you are, then it's out there on so many sites, and one of them is going to get breached, and your age is out there. If you don't want it out there, that's not good. But if it's on your system, theoretically, all they would have to say is, are you old enough? And not even necessarily get your actual age.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's keep moving. We're actually going to take a very quick break, and then we're going to talk Gnome. We'll do that right after this.
A lot of times in the open source software, one of the biggest challenges isn't innovation, it's sustainability. Gnome over the years has had issues with their funding, and we've done stories in the past how they've sometimes ran at a loss funding-wise. Gnome is now trying to take another step, trying to address that. The Gnome Foundation has announced a new initiative called the Gnome Fellowship Program, designed to directly fund contributors working on the long-term health of the project. Under the program, selected fellows will receive funding, and when I say fellows, it's, people, not male, will receive funding for a period of about 12 months with compensation typically ranging between about $70,000 and $100,000 per year. Now, it depends on experience and your location. But the first round of fellowships is expected to begin around May 2026, and it will initially support a small number of contributors, potentially one full-time fellow or 2 part-time participants. A person can propose how much time they can dedicate to the project. So it's not like you're just saying, I going to be, it's full time or nothing. It's, depending on the number of people and then time requirements, they can have a little flexibility in the support numbers. Now this next statement is where I'm hoping it goes well, but they say rather than assigning strict deliverables, the program is designed around trust. Fellows are expected to identify high impact problems themselves and to work on improving the project's overall sustainability. For the first round, they want to focus, exactly what they want to focus on is sustainability. Infrastructure, testing systems, documentation, and maintenance, they don't often attract the same attention as new features, but they're essential to keep a project running. They're the needed background tasks to keep things rolling, and other areas like, system builds, continuous integration pipelines, developer tooling, accessibility, and, basically reducing technical debt overall. It's work that's often critical, but rarely prioritized in a volunteer-driven environment. One of the goals of the program is when you donate, the money is going to fund the code and not some other initiative. Sometimes, when you give, you're it's kind of in a big bucket. This is going straight, where this is going.
I don't want to give the money that pays for the executives to get their first class tickets off to the yearly retreat in Bali.
How'd I get in that bucket?
The initiative is funded through donations to the Gnome Foundation, and it particularly comes from its Friends of Gnome supporters. That funding model reflects it reflects a broader shift in how open source projects are thinking about sustainability, moving from purely volunteer-driven contributions to more structured financial support. Now, applications for the inaugural fellowship are now open, targeting experienced contributors with a proven track record in the Gnome project. So that's where, because they're giving trust, you're going to have already really proven yourself to Gnome to be able to get on this, because to give trust, you kind of had to earn some of it. Ultimately, the success of the program will depend not just on its first cohort, but on continued donor support, and if sustained, could become a model for how major open source projects invest in their own future, funding the work that keeps keeping everything else possible. Take a look at the 2 articles in the show notes for more details. And while I just put the 2 articles in the show notes, there are a ton of other articles on this, all talking about this initiative. And I personally will say this, while I love KDE, I don't want to see anything happen to Gnome, because while, Gnome and KDE are 2 of the biggest players out there, they feed off each other and other desktops for good ideas, and it grows the ecosystem as a whole. So the more desktops out there doing new innovative things, the better, because you see what works and what works good together and what doesn't, and people borrow from each other, and it helps everybody. So any particular thoughts from my co-hosts?
I really like this, actually. Find the engineers that are actually doing the work and give them a reasonable wage to do it. It's great.
Yeah, it really, that we've talked about it before. It's the support stuff that really is core to a project that's hardest to keep going. It's not flashy, it's not really cool, but it's the daily grind that you got to have to keep everything rolling.
You know who apparently has a lot of money? Nobody's doing this story, but Canonical is given $150,000 a year to the Rust project, I think it is. So
you're right. None of us covered that story this week, but it's out there.
Good for them.
Yeah, I like to see them giving back.
Yeah. But
absolutely.
Basically, it comes down to, I hate to put it this way, but it's the only way I can think of phrasing it is following your heart on this.
Oh, you mean those people that apply for it?
Or that help to support it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if Gnome has made a difference for you, then absolutely think about trying to support this. The one Jeff sort of touched on this. The one thing that could become a problem Hopefully it doesn't. But they talked about not having deliverables, and someone will have to watch it to make sure that the people that are getting paid what is essentially a full-time salary are actually putting an appropriate amount of work in, and that can get dicey. It can be I mean, anytime somebody is salaried, that is a challenge to make sure that they're actually, clocking in and doing the work as opposed to just phoning it in from home or whatever.
Yeah,
I like Gnome, but really these days Cosmic is my DE of choice.
Oh, interesting.
Well, back when I covered it, I started donating a little bit towards the open source lab when they were asking for help.
The USL,
I've done KDE and Code Weavers. Well,
yep. I give a little bit towards our door in their monthly thing, and their arrangement is kind of like this. Now, fewer people work on it, and they are full time. I think there's 2 people that work on it full time, and our door takes care of their salary. But it's the same thing. People pay or donate to be able to get into that, and then they pay a wage to those guys that are doing the program.
I should clarify too. Code Weavers is a commercial product, but the work they do does a lot of feeding of wine. So the wine is kind of the trickle down of Code Weavers. So it.
Actually, I think it's kind of both ways, isn't it?
No.
It definitely goes both ways.
Code Weavers doing the majority of work because I want to say they fully support or hired. Was it Alexandre Juilliard? Isn't that the top developer of wine? Yeah.
Do you technically donate, or are you just like a member? Like you have their product, which has an annual.
I have their product, which is.
But you don't.
I don't really need
donating.
it. But yeah, I don't really need it. But I like wine, so I support it.
That's what makes it a donation.
Officially, you're just paying for the product, but since you don't use it, it's a donation.
Yeah. Because I use the downstream Proton and stuff.
Now that we have cleared up that incredibly important detail, we're going to let Ken talk about OpenSUSE and the new Agama 19 installer. What's going on there, Ken?
Well, Jonathan, as you said, we're going to be talking about what Marcus Nestor wrote about, the OpenSUSE project releasing the Agama 19 web-based installer for OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, Slowroll, and MicroOS operating systems. This major release introduces several new features, small improvements, and bug fixes. It introduces the ability to install some SUSE Linux distributions in so-called installation modes, such as standard or immutable, and adds the ability to use SSH public keys to authenticate the user. You now have the ability to install into an existing LVM volume group and add new physical volumes to an existing volume group, and even a new option to download the current installer configuration in JSON format. Under the hood, the Agama 19 installer introduces a major architectural revamp that allows the core of the installer to be controlled through a consistent and simple API, while keeping the JSON-based configuration format fully backwards compatible with previous versions of the Agama installer. As always, I recommend reading Marcus's article for more details about Agama 19, since I'm only taking time to cover some of the highlights.
Is it Agama or Agama? You've been saying both of them.
It's the internet. Nobody knows how to pronounce anything.
It's the internet twisting my words too.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is their new web-based installer, right? Where everything's HTML and JavaScript and all that fun stuff. Yeah. I remember when that first became popular and people really hated on it. Like, that's dumb. Why? It sort of makes sense. Just build everything the same way. Looks like it works.
I'll let you know the next time I do an installation of OpenSUSE.
There you go. All right. Well, there's one more story that's been hanging around this week that we desperately need to talk about, and we're going to get our AI fix for the day. And that's something going on at the Linux kernel, which the Linux guys, the kernel guys, have always been sort of the early adopters for tooling, and they've been using AI. They've been using AI for a long time, even before the current AI craze. There was LLM and inference and stuff that they were using, evaluating bug reports and evaluating pull requests and all of that. So Stephen J. Von Nichols sat down with Greg Kroll-Hartman at apparently a KubeCon in Europe this past week, and they had a conversation about AI slop in the kernel and bug reports. And so this is something that we've talked about here a few times. We've talked about Daniel Stenberg over at Curl closing down their bug bounty program because of exactly this problem. Because it was so easy to convince an LLM or to ask an LLM to write a convincing bug report. Whether or not there was actually a bug there or not, the LLM could write a convincing bug report. And so there was this ongoing problem, and it's still a problem. I even really reading what they talk about here, I'm convinced that it is still a problem, that it is so trivial to use an LLM to write a bug report, even though there's nothing there to be found. Well, the kernel guys they've started seeing something different, and that is that these LLM tools, these AI tools, are, instead of just finding slop, they are now finding real problems, real bugs. And they said about a month ago is when they really noticed the change. And so it's not just the kernel that's seeing this, according to Greg. It's a lot of different open source projects, and these AI discovered bug reports are actually decent. Now, I'm not seeing a whole lot of AI bug reports. On the projects I'm in, we're still seeing a lot of AI pull requests, and sometimes those are funny and take a lot of time and do not get merged in the end, we shall say. But we also see something kind of funny. A lot of people are using LLMs to write feature requests. We got one the other day that it's like, someone must have said, "Hey, LLM, ask for this thing, but ask for it in a low-key way," because the issue started out like, "Hey, fam, let me cook," and it's like, oh my goodness, that's the funniest thing ever. It was actually a decent idea, which is what's funny. It's just the way that it was presented was you knew it was an LLM that was told to write it in this silly way. So the kernel is seeing this, that a lot of these bug reports are actually real. And in some cases, they can set an LLM on them and get reasonable code fixes too. And this is kind of what I've seen in various places, and what we've seen in the projects is someone that knows what they're doing can use an LLM to get really good results. And the problem is that it is so easy for someone that has no idea what they're doing to use an LLM to get not good results, but have those results look good at first glance. And so I think part of what is going on with the kernel is that to even be able to report a bug in a way that someone's going to look at it, you kind of have to have a clue, because it's all email based, and they have some really good spam protection tools. Like, you've got to write the email in just the right way for it to make it through and someone to actually look at it. And that kind of adds just the right amount of friction. I think that they are not being overrun with LLM stuff, with the AI slop. So I don't know. Do any of you guys have your sort of fingers on the pulse of open source projects? Am I the only one that is really sort of running a project right now? I think that might be the case.
Anything big, I dabble in little things here and there, but nobody ever downloads them or even goes to the page. And then after 2 years, I'm like, well, if nobody wants this, I guess I'm just gonna abandon it.
Most of my open source projects are ones I use myself.
I think you really...
What I found interesting from this is that the Google's review system, having become a Linux Foundation project,
that one's interesting.
Means that's going to make that available for all these open source projects to use.
Yeah, I'm hoping someone figures out a way to integrate that into GitHub. That would be pretty nice.
And
see.
GitLab.
I mean, GitLab too, but let's be honest.
Maybe
There's more open source projects on GitHub. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to be integrated into Git. That does not actually make any sense.
Let's put an
GitHub,
age
GitLab, all the
field
places.
into Git.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Jonathan, when you said it's all about how the person uses it. Because you could have a good analogy just saying it's like a crayon. You give some people a crayon and they're going to come up with beautiful art, and some people it's just a scribble.
Yeah. Well, there's the show title. It's like a crayon.
Ironically funny, I don't know, when you said that the Linux kernel has always been early adopters with tooling, yet they still use mailing lists.
If it works,
Yeah.
if a tool works, keep using it.
I mean, we all know there's better
until it
tooling out
breaks.
there for that too, though.
And I wasn't actually,
and they haven't used some of the.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I wasn't actually even trying for a show title, but it's a good way to explain to people that don't really understand. It's like, well, it's good, it's bad. It's like, well, look, it's the artist behind it. Mm-hmm. And if you use that analogy, it's one that a lot of people understand. And it's like, you can't just randomly go, here's the tool, go at it. It's like, no,
there's a sledgehammer. Go make me this fine scale.
I would say there is still some difference between a crayon. Like, for example, AI. If you're making something really small and you get lucky, you can still make something that works well. And even without knowing what you're doing. It's the big projects that you're going to struggle with.
It's an analogy, Rob.
A crayon.
I like analogies like fat kids like cupcakes.
Oh,
jeez.
Cut that one out, guys. We don't want that one as part of the show. That is not going to be the show title. Oh my
Actually, one of the nice things with AI is you can also have fun where you can say, review the work I've done this last week, but give it to me in a comedy roast format, or talk like a pirate. Or,
Yeah.
Yes. Or be low key, fam.
Oh.
Yeah, we've gotten some of those.
I do hate that sometimes when I ask you to do something, it starts getting all flowery and wordy with things like, I don't talk like that.
I had one. It was, and I wish I would have kept it. I was asking for something rather complex from AI, and it replied back something like, I would pick up a cocktail and I would look at the person as I swirled my drink, and it's like, that has nothing to do with what. I mean,
I don't know what you're using, but all mine save.
That's
I can
great.
go back to forever and everything I use.
Well, I was just firing a bunch off, and I cleared it. And
I guess there's a few that I clear. Is like, okay, I don't need to save that one, but yeah.
Because it was like, what the heck happened? Let me redo this. And then it came back with what I needed, but it was like, I've never seen it derail that far before.
You've got to shut them down occasionally and start them up again.
If I've learned anything from reading sci-fi novels about AI, you absolutely can't just let them run forever.
Yeah, you have to reset them, because one, it keeps the context, so it's looking back at the things you've already previously asked it, so it's trying to incorporate some of that knowledge, and then as it stores more, it gets more of those tokens, it builds up, and then it, depending what you're using, it starts getting too big, and it falls apart.
It doesn't go away, though. I mean, at least some of them, you can delete it and whatever. And you talk about something 2 years down the road and it brings up something you said 2 years ago. I was like, I don't want you to bring that into this. That's old news or whatever.
Well, so that's not necessarily where it's saving your context. That's just where your previous conversation is now part of its training data. That is funny, though, when you think about it. Like, how many of the sci-fi novels talking about AI had that as part of their plot points, and now that we're using AI for real, it is a thing that we're seeing. That, like, these things do get weird if their context goes on for too long. It's trying to keep too much in state at the same time.
Just ask your AI sometimes.
All right,
sometime, what do you know about me? And you see what it says. I've done it.
Oof. I'm sure. All right, let's move on to our tips. We've talked about a whole bunch of news stories. It's getting late. Let's get into some tips. We're gonna let Rob go first, but last first. We're gonna take our first break.
All right. So last week I showed you Oh My Posh, the way to spice up your terminal. Well, and I told you that I would show you an easy way to install it and customize it. So that's what I'm doing this week. It's called OMP Manager or Oh My Posh Manager. So with that, it is a cargo app. Check the show notes, install it via cargo. And then once you install that, super easy by running cargo install OMP-manager, I think. But anyway, run OMP-manager. And the first thing it'll bring you up, it'll bring you up a menu where one of them is a quick setup. So if you just do that, it will go through the steps. Install My Posh, complete. Install Nerd Font, complete. Choose a theme, and you choose your theme. And when it's complete. Configure the shell. You pick your shell, bash, ZFS, fish. And then once that's installed, you can always come back and browse the themes and install other themes. So if I browse the themes, there are a lot of themes in here, and they're all just different colors. But for those watching, you can see all these different themes. And, I'm only in the B's here, but all the different themes where you can Oh My Posh your terminal. Now, you can install their fonts if you want. I actually haven't. Maybe you can't install their fonts. I guess they only have one font. I haven't even looked at that because I didn't really care about fonts. I'm not a font guy. Update Oh My Posh. You can reset to default if you don't want to do it anymore. But anyway, that's it. It's OMP Manager to easily set up Oh My Posh and customize your terminal. And you can do it once and you get bored. Next week you can do a different theme and do a different theme the week later. And you just keep that thing, keep that terminal interesting, fresh.
Keep it fresh,
everyone.
Nice. All right, cool. Up next, Jeff doing some music.
Yeah. So I got Fluid Synth as my command line tip of the week. And Fluid Synth is a cross-platform real-time software synthesizer based on the Sound Font 2 specification. Sound Font, for those who don't know, is a file format for sample-based instrument sounds. So that's where you keep little samples of sounds, and then the MIDI is so let me back up. Fluid Synth supports real-time MIDI effects controls. So when the MIDI is how you play those different sounds found in your sound font file. I hope that makes sense. Fluid Synth can also be used as a shared library for embedding in other applications. It can play MIDI files and has a command line shell. In fact, a lot of other applications use Fluid Synth for audio synthesis. Fluid Synth itself, though, is only a command line tool, though there are other GUI applications which can be used as a graphical interface for it. The simplest way to use it the simplest way to use it to see about getting a sound file would be on the command line. You would do Fluid Synth space your sound file, so that's your sound font file, and then space and then a MIDI file. Now, most of the time, you're not going to be using a MIDI file to play your sounds and music. Instead, you're going to be using a program or an interface to pass MIDI events to the program. But this just lets you see that things are working. And they do have a link to some test files you can use, just so you can play with it a little bit. Take a look at the link in the show notes for the link to the GitHub page, and it's also has a link inside the GitHub page to their wiki pages where there's a ton of documentation on setup and usage and getting the most out of it. And that's where you also find some of those demo files that you can play with and have a lot of fun with. So happy music making.
Yeah. Absolutely. One of the really fun things you can do if you're into old school like DOS games, you can run a DOS game inside of DOSBox, and if it wants to give a MIDI file output, you can actually route that MIDI around inside your system, and so you can route it to a running fluid synth and then out your speakers. Some very fun stuff that you can do with fluid synth and MIDI,
especially if you've got a MIDI keyboard to use.
And MIDI used to be really big because back in the days you didn't have the storage and the memory, so you would just sample a few different sounds, and then you could use by playing those specific sounds over in a different order. You could have a whole big music sounding production, but it was a very small file because it only used 8 notes or something like that, and
4 notes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
however many you wanted to use. It's only 4 chords.
Yep.
Every song is only 4 chords. Anyway, Ken, let's talk about meta information, probably in graphics, if I understand this correctly.
I'm actually talking about the EXIF tool as the command line tip I'm bringing this week. It's basically a command line interface to the image : EXIF tool, used for reading and writing meta information in a variety of file types. The file is one or more source file names, directory names, or can be the standard input or the dash when you type it on the keyboard or on the terminal. But the metadata is read from those source files and printed in readable form to the console, or written to an output text files with a -W. Basically, you can use EXIF tool to read a photo's current metadata or to write updated metadata to the photo. It even allows you to copy or export the metadata into a separated value file format, HTML or JSON. Let me go ahead and bring up my console here, and I'll give you an example of using it with a ping file I have. For those of y'all listening, I've got EXIF2 followed by the name of the ping file. I'm not going to bother reading that because it's a long one. But it comes back, gives you the version number for the EXIF tool I'm using. It gives you the file name, the directory I'm accessing it in relation to the directory I'm accessing it from. In this case, it's just a dot. The file size, file modification, access, date and time, and the file inode change date and time. It was interesting when I was doing this that the original file had a different inode date compared to the initial modification date. But it also goes down, gives you file permissions, type extension, the MIME type, image width and height, bit depth, in this case it's 8-bit, color type, which is RGB with alpha, compression, it's deflate, inflate since it's a ping file. The filter is adaptive, the interlace is non-interlaced, sRGB rendering, an image size, and megapixels. Now, what you can do with EXIF tool is, say you've got a group of files and you want to add comments to the metadata. You can do that by typing in the EXIF2 either before or after the file name. You can put in quotes. In this case, I'm putting -comment equals sunset. That's just to add the comma value to it. And now we go back and read that file, and you'll see you've got a comment line in the metadata that has the value of sunset.
Nice.
So it's a way you can go in and add additional information to some of your graphics files. You can even do it with videos.
Comment that you did in there, that isn't a special field. Like you could have said comments or my stuff or anything you wanted there, or is comment, or do you have to use special? Yeah, okay.
You could say -comment, or you could say -my comment.
Yep, nice.
Equals, and then what the value is going to be.
Cool. All right. Good to see. I've got a bit of a demo here that we're going to try. And I'm trying it as a demo because I intend to run this as a demo at the Ubuntu conference. And so you guys get to get it live, at least part of it. And that is, we're going to do some Grafana work. So if you're not familiar with Grafana, it is basically a toolkit for making dashboards for visualizing data. So I've done this on the desktop behind me. I've not done it on this machine yet. So this is Fedora specific, although these are going to be similar for basically any distro. We're just going to install it, and of course, this is not always a great idea. It makes it a little easier on typing stuff in. So we're going to grab the install. We get to see how fast my internet connection is. As soon as it's done, we can use systemctl to start it, and systemctl start Grafana-server and systemctl enable Grafana-server to get it to auto start each time. Hold on, we're running the SE Linux script, which that's going to be important here in just a second. You're on an SE Linux system like Fedora.
Don't you think that's a little blasphemous, running DNF at a Ubuntu conference?
So I have thought about doing this on it, but we'll see. So Grafana-server. All right, it is started, and then I'll quick run a status. It is there. Storage starting. It's doing its thing. All right, and I believe that's 127.0.0.1 8,000. Nope, I can't remember it. Let's see. I've got it in my notes. 3,000. 3,000. Can't type while live. All right. Yep. Here we go.
That's why I copy and paste.
Let me replace with the tab. All right. Welcome to Grafana. The username and the password is just admin by default. And yes, it's offering to add to LastPass. No, I don't want you to add to LastPass. And then, of course, Grafana, the first thing it does is it says, update your password. This is not secure. And I know I'm going to hit skip. So it brings you right in. So here is the initial view of Grafana. Obviously, we don't have any data sources or anything. And I'm going to walk through adding a first data source as well. And so there's a bunch of different options here. There's Prometheus and Graphite. Prometheus is one of the most common ones. But we're actually going to go up and add a new connection, and you get all of the different plugins that they've got here. The one that I'm interested in is actually MQTT way down here. And we can just hit the install button here, and it will install it as a plugin. And then we can say add new data source. And we are now ready. If we had an MQTT server running, we could absolutely, well, Mosquito is just an install away, right? Let's see if we can do that real quick too. All right. DNF install Mosquito. Mosquito is an open source MQTT server. Yes, please. It's going to go through, grab it, do all the things. All right. And then systemctl start Mosquito. It's running. That was fast. Again, we'll do a status. Starting. It's running. Config loaded from mosquito.conf. All right. I happen to know that TCP or Mosquito is going to open up at TCP and localhost and port 1883. So let's go back to Grafana. Wrong button. There we go. Back to Grafana. And we'll say TCP : / 127.0.0.1 and then port 1883. And we'll scroll down and we'll say save and test. And it doesn't work. Error connecting to MQTT broker, network error. Well, I also have another pop-up here that you guys can't see because I am just capturing the I'm capturing the tab, but I got an SE Linux pop-up. And I knew this was coming. Is SE Linux blocked Grafana from being able to talk to Mosquito? And this is actually fairly easy to work around. So we're going to tail the audit.log file and grab the last, say, 1,000 lines from it, and we're going to pipe it through a command that you get in Fedora and other Red Hat-based systems called audit2allow. Yeah, and so it's going to go through and say, hey, here's the SE Linux rule that will fix this. Now, in this case, it's saying just let Grafana talk to TCP sockets. If you were to do this on a real like deployment system, you would want to scope that down and say, no, we want only Grafana to talk to MQTT. But for here, it's fine. So the full command to run this is not that. Retell it to audit2allow -a-M and then the name of whatever it is. And I've just called it Grafana TCP. I'm going to run that and it will create a local file. And then it gives you the command right here to make this policy active, se module -i Grafana TCP.pp. And we run that. It's going to take just a second. Let it do its, let it cook. SE Linux is slow sometimes. All right, it finished it. Now let's kick back over here to the Grafana interface and see if it works now. Save and test. Yeah, MQTT connected. And then we can start building a dashboard. So it is, it's there, and you can see under the data sources. You go in and fiddle with it. So I think we're going to stop there for the moment, and probably next week we will look at this a bit more and take the next step in doing something actually interesting with grabbing some data from somewhere. And I already have ideas about what we're going to do. And putting it on Grafana. This is something that I've seen people do and I've never done myself. And so this is the way I learn things, and I'm documenting it so that 5 years from now, when I'm going, how did I do that Grafana thing? I come back to my notes from this.
And it is available on Arch as well in the main repositories.
Grafana is going to be available most places. Mosquito is going to be available on most distros.
Grafana's pretty big.
It should be.
So you set up the server on one system, and you can access it from other systems.
You could. I would have to go in and do some fiddling with the configuration, configuration of each of these tools and the firewall of each of these tools. It's a whole lot easier to get this working all on one local machine. But yeah, you can do it from other machines too if you really want to. So yeah, we'll build on this in the future. We'll get a pretty cool dashboard, and I probably won't demo all of this at the Ubuntu place, at the Ubuntu conference. I will just demo the end result of it. But again, I had to put the work in.
It makes a lot of sense, or it makes it more useful if it's on a server and actually, run it all the time than on your desktop.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you want to do with it, right? Like if you're just wanting to be able to look at your local machine and see what your RAM is doing, well, then maybe on your local machine. But yeah, if you want to watch more than one system, or you want to be able to get to it from anywhere, then yeah, put it on a server somewhere. So, it just depends. But all of this stuff is going to be applicable. It's basically the same process, just a few more steps to get it accessible more globally. So yeah, there we go. That's command line tips. We're gonna let each of the guys get the last word if they want to, or plug something, what have you. Rob is in the first place slot, and so we will let him. We do it like we're going around the clock, and so we'll let Rob go first.
Well, I mean, for my screen, you're going the other way. I was like, well, for me, it's this way.
Gotta remember mirroring.
Yeah. Yes, I've had that.
Anyway,
Rob.
All right. First, I want to start off. I feel like I missed thanking somebody who donated a coffee to me or something. And I don't remember thanking him. I was just looking at this during the show here to make sure I didn't miss anybody. And I already thanked Mike last time when he donated to me, George, Paul, and Ringo here. And I don't know if it's the same Mike down below who's also donated in the past, but there's one right in there that says, "Love the Untitled Linux Show" from Donner. That I don't think I thanked them. I don't even think I noticed. Somehow I missed that they donated. I'll have to dig in sometime and see how long ago they donated. But thank you for the coffee. I will appreciate it. And if I already thanked you once, well, I guess it's a bonus thank you. And for those who want to get thanked live here on the show by me, all you have to do is go to my website, robertpcampbell.com. On that website, you can find links to my little buttons to my LinkedIn, my Twitter, my Blue Sky, Mastodon, and that, I don't know, I can't think of a good word, but the amazing, wonderful place where you can donate a coffee to me, and I will thank you live on the show. Whatever you put on there, you can be anonymous, or you can put your first name, you can put your whole name, put whatever you want, and I will thank you. I guess as long as it's appropriate. If you put an inappropriate name on there, if the system even lets you, I don't know. I'll just thank somebody. I'm not, yeah. So anyway, come connect with me and donate a coffee or whatever.
Very cool. All right, Jeff.
Not much to say. Those of you that do want to connect, you can go through LinkedIn, but you have to be a friend with Rob first, or else you won't get through because I get too many of them. Other than that, and I thought about reading this in the theatrical voice. It's just another haiku, but I'll give it to you standard. Chaos reigns within. Reflect, repent, and reboot. Order shall return. Have a great week, everybody.
Chaos reigns within.
I thought about that, but I thought,
Actually, that worked better for me, the way you did it.
It didn't work for me, Jeff.
Fun. All right. And then Kim.
Just want to remind everybody, especially for those of y'all who are in the U.S., where tax season is coming to an end in 3 weeks? Make sure to back up all those records.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Print them out. I actually printed mine out.
Kill a tree.
All right. Yeah. A whole tree for 15 sheets of paper. Right.
Well, small tree.
Anyway, thank you guys for being here. It is, real small tree. It's been a blast, and thank you everybody for watching. We appreciate it, and we will be back. We appreciate those whether you watch or listen live or on the download, and we'll be back next week on the Untitled Linux Show.